It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the environmental mess we've created, but you can make a difference, and luckily it starts in your own back and front yard. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Samari, and welcome to Gardening for Wildlife. I'm excited to share with you information about the National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife programs, which include community and individual wildlife habitat certifications. We'll also be discussing the 5 components of creating a wildlife-friendly garden and providing inspiration and resources to empower you to get started gardening for wildlife today. The Garden for Wildlife program was created in 1973, and since that time, millions of folks have used its framework to plant with a purpose and create beautiful spaces that support birds, butterflies, and other wildlife. The National Wildlife Federation is mapping certified wildlife habitats, which help to create corridors of connectivity and counteract habitat fragmentation and species decline. Individual yards may be small, but they make up a large percentage of urban landscapes and have the potential to play an important role in conservation efforts. The Certified Community Wildlife Habitat Program is a partnership between the National Wildlife Federation and communities of all kinds to become healthier, greener, and more wildlife friendly. Currently, Bloomington and Zionsville are the only certified wildlife habitat communities in Indiana. Certification is earned by combining education and outreach with individual certification of homes, businesses, schools, and parks. The number of individual certifications required is based on the community's population and forms the foundation of the community certification. It generally takes about 2 years from registering to the completion of the certification. Through this program, communities can enhance wildlife corridors and connect to existing work around climate and community resiliency, urban forestry, water conservation, and beautification. Benefits of community certification include providing a proven framework to engage community to take action, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, it's all right there. Aligns with other community priorities like helping reduce carbon emissions by expanding the urban tree canopy and reducing polluted runoff. It also supports communities in creating and implementing wildlife conservation strategies. Community wildlife certification helps meet clean water goals, beautifies the community, builds community through shared conversation and commitments, and also education and outreach events, and it provides national recognition for efforts to support and protect wildlife. Every big vision starts with small steps, and anyone can participate right now by gardening for wildlife in their own yard or even on a balcony or patio by providing food, water, cover, and a place to raise young, and by adopting more sustainable gardening practices. We'll go through each one of those elements in detail so that you'll have an idea of how to start after this talk. Food is the first habitat component to provide. It's the most important way to offer food through native plants. Natives offer natural food sources like seeds, berries, nuts, foliage, pollen, and nectar. The insects supported by native plants also become food for birds and other wildlife. Native is a term that describes the plant's function in the environment rather than talking about a label a species earns after a given period of time, according to Doug Tallamy in Nature's Best Hope. We're looking for plants that are ecologically productive and play well with others. For example, a mid-Atlantic region oak tree supports 557 caterpillar species, while a Callery pear supports 1 caterpillar species. Space is often limited in folks' yards, so you want to make the most of your yard by planting trees, shrubs, and flowers that support the highest number of species. This is called carrying capacity, and our planting goal is to increase that. Did you know that caterpillars are the most calorie-dense food for nestlings? In one study, Carolina chickadees delivered 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to their babies over a 16-day nesting period. I bet they hoped there were some oak trees in that yard. The second component of gardening for wildlife is water. Creatures use it for drinking and bathing. It can be a natural water feature or you can create it, but keep in mind that the type of water feature you add to your yard determines the type of wildlife who show up. cover is the third element of planting for wildlife. Wildlife needs places to find shelter from both hot and cold temperatures, high winds, storms, and other weather conditions. Animals also need hiding places from predators, and predators need camouflage in order to catch their prey. There are many ways you can provide cover in your garden or yard, and it's as much about how you plant as what you plant. Forest plant communities have several structural layers from the floor all the way up to the treetop canopy, and each layer supports a different wildlife species. Layered planting includes large trees, then smaller understory trees and large shrubs, then smaller shrubs, woodland flowers, sedges, and ferns. All wildlife species need places to raise their young. Providing food, water, and cover helps individual animals survive, but without adequate space and resources to find a mate and places to build nests or dig dens and burrows, wildlife populations will eventually decline. Wildlife may use the same plants that provide cover to raise their young, and these plants provide space and materials to build nests. Sustainable gardening practices are the maintenance and management techniques you will use to keep your garden healthy for wildlife and for you, while also minimizing its potential negative effect on the ecosystem. Providing food, water, cover, and places to raise young will give wildlife a home, but how you maintain the habitat is just as important. Spraying pesticides and planting non-native invasive plants and wasting water counteract all the hard work and benefit that you've been giving to wildlife. Important soil and water conservation tips can be achieved by using mulch, rain barrels, and drip or soaker hoses. You can control exotic species by using native plants and reducing lawn areas, and by using organic practices like eliminating pesticides and fertilizers and using compost. One way to think about it is mow high and water low. Gardening for wildlife may seem like a huge task, so it's really important to just start small. The two pictures on your screen are before and after from the yard that I live in. When I moved in, it was a big soccer field. There was nothing in the front yard except grass. So little by little, in the vertical picture, I've been adding plants, and often I'm on a budget, so I look for the scratch and dent section in the plant store, the ones that are often on sale. I've also been lucky enough to share plants with folks who, when they're dividing their plants up, I have gone over and picked up pots of plants. So this didn't happen overnight, and it's certainly a work in progress, and I change things out, and sometimes plants don't make it, sometimes they do, but it's been reading and looking around, looking at other folks' yards or places where plants are growing, and just kind of seeing what works. So it's important to take before and after pictures. Google Maps helped me with the before picture because I couldn't find any of my before pictures. There's some great native plant finder sites, and the first one is the National Wildlife Federation, NWF/Native Plant Finder, and then there's the Audubon.org/plants for birds, and both of those have really great lists of plants that you can print off. You can make a list, and you can take those lists to the nursery, and then you can read the nursery tags and see, oh, I need a sunny spot plant or a shady plant, and some of it's trial and error. So if you're not really sure about a plant, before you go crazy spending a ton of money on them, try a couple and then see how they do in your yard. So you can replace existing plants with natives as your budget allows and space allows. And particularly, this is great if something dies, plant a native in its place. Again, you want to find some plants that increase carrying capacity. So if you have a limited space, to plant one tree, pick a tree like an oak or a serviceberry that they're good natives, and they provide homes for lots of species. So your habitat doesn't have to be a jungle to help wildlife, and that should help with the neighbors so you don't upset your neighbors. And remember to have fun. This is a learning process. It can bring lots of enjoyment when you get out to look at your beautiful yard and all the creatures that come along. And it takes a little time too, so it won't happen overnight, but there's certainly some advantages to doing this for your own self and for the creatures. You may or may not decide to certify your yard through the National Wildlife Federation, but just in case you do decide to certify, you can also purchase a sign, which is kind of fun to have in your yard. And then it also is a conversation starter. I've been out working in my yard lots of times and folks have asked me about it and, the plants that I'm planting and then what the certification is all about. And I've also included their walkthrough checklist. You can download that at their website and you can go through your yard, but it offers a lot of different choices in each of the 5 essential categories. And I was really surprised when I first started. I thought, I don't have a ton of land and I don't have a creek running through there. How am I going to do these things? And they've really made gardening for wildlife accessible to folks, particularly in urban environments. And because the main thing is that we're planting what we can to help support pollinators and other wildlife. So it's doing what we can with what we have where we are. Particularly relevant for this time. 83% of U.S. land is privately owned, and we all have an important role to play as stewards of this land. Combining our individual efforts, yard by yard, really does make a positive difference for people, animals, and the environment. And I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Jane Goodall. Every individual matters. Every individual has a role to play. Every individual makes a difference. You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Thank you.